Hello everybody. Now we're going to discuss about the history of virtual reality. In mid-1950s, a visionary cinematographer, Morton Heilig, developed the Sensorama, which was patented in 1962. It was an arcade-style theater cabinet that would simulate all the senses, not just sight and sound. It had been featured stereo speakers, a stereoscopic 3D display, fans, smell generators, and a vibrating chair. The Sensorama was intended to fully immerse the individual in a film. Mr. Heilig also created 6 short films for his invention. And most important thing was he should produced and edited everything by himself. The Sensorama films were titled like Motorcycle, Ballet Dancers, Dune Buggy, Helicopter, A Date with Sabina, and the final one is I Am a Coca-Cola Bottle. Let me discuss about the types of virtual reality. There are 3 types of virtual realities: immersive virtual reality, non-immersive virtual reality, and the final one is window on world virtual reality. Let me start with the immersive virtual reality first. Immersive virtual reality is like immersion into virtual reality in a perception of being physically present in the non-physical world. To make the immersion more realistic, there are different types of elements are required. These are like the community of surroundings, the compartments of human vision, and the freedom of movement, physical interaction, and the physical feedback. The second type is non-immersive virtual reality. So non-immersive virtual reality actually requires large display, but it doesn't require any surrounding devices like the display can be at a distant place, but it is not necessarily very closer. So this figure illustrates the non-immersive virtual reality example. So this is the third type of virtual reality, which is window on virtual world virtual reality. So in this kind of reality, a desktop-based virtual reality involves the displaying a 3-dimensional virtual or regular desktop display. It doesn't require use of any specialized movement tracking environment. So this figure illustrates a window on world virtual reality. Now let me discuss about the architecture of the virtual reality system. So this is a very generic and basic architecture of a virtual reality system. A virtual reality system can be more complex than this one. So, but we are actually describing the very basic one. So, a virtual reality system composed of several essential components. These are input processors, simulation processors, rendering processors, and WAL database. So input processors basically controls the devices used to input information to the computer or creating the virtual world digitally. The object is to get the coordinate data to rest the system with minimum lag of time. The very basic input devices for this input processing are like keyboard, mouse, 3D positions trackers, a voice recognition system, etc. But if you look into advanced devices, we can see some advanced devices here in this figure, which are the Priovier and the Razer Hydra, STEM, and Control Vier. These kind of input devices are being used in the modern VR industries nowadays. The simulation processor. Actually, the simulation processor is very important to simulate the real world to make the digital content. This is basically the core of a VR system. The simulation processors take the user inputs along with any task programmed into the world, and it determines the actions that will take place in the virtual world. And the simulation processor created the digital content in such a way that will be compatible to reproduced by the output devices. We can see some important output devices here in these pictures, which are VR headset, 3D audio, and sensing gloves, Hall, Senki, etc. Rendering processor. The rendering processor is also very important, important unit of a VR system. Rendering processor basically creates the sensations that are output to the users. Actually, the rendering processor render the created data, simulation data from the repository, which is basically the world database, and it provides to the output devices, which actually finally reproduce the sensation to the user. Separate rendering processes are used for visual, auditory, haptic, and other sensory systems. So there could be different types of rendering processors, right? For different types of sensory data, like visual, auditory, haptic, and other kind of sensory data. Each render takes a description of the world, starts from the simulation processes, and drive it directly from the world database for each time step. Finally, the world database. What is the world database? World database is actually the repository of all objects, or most precisely the simulated data and scripts. Actually, the objects that inhabits the world, and the scripts are like the descriptions of actions that would be performed on objects. And now we are going to disclose some important applications of virtual reality. Actually, the virtual reality is very immersive technology, and people are very excited about the virtual reality nowadays. Nowadays, the virtual reality are being applied in the military, in healthcare sectors, and in education, and also importantly in scientific data visualizations, because it has very powerful visualization capabilities. And this is a very interesting and important application of virtual reality. So if we think in this situation, as like in this pandemic situation, we cannot watch our very favorite cricket match or football match physically. In this situation, the virtual environment techniques of virtual reality will be very helpful for us. So by creating this kind of virtual environment with the help of virtual reality technology, people can easily watch mm, uh, the games like cricket and football in this kind of virtual reality environment, which which is actually very exciting and very interesting to the people. So I would say the virtual environment creations in the virtual reality technology is very important technology that can be adopted in this kind of situation. And people are actually being adapting this kind of techniques nowadays. So finally, I can conclude with the advantages and disadvantages of VR. So virtual reality basically creates a realistic world. This is the advantages to the people. And it enables the user to explore different places. It could be real places. It could be some existing places, or it can also be some virtual places as well. And through virtual reality, user can experiment with an artificial environment. And virtual reality also makes the education more easily and comfortable. And the disadvantages of virtual reality are like the equipment used in virtual reality are very expensive. So it is very difficult to afford all kind of people, all kind of people. It consists of complex technologies. So in a VR system, there is a lot of many complex technologies involved. In virtual reality environment, we can move by our own like a real world. Actually, there are limited space to move, right? We can't move here and there as we can move easily in the real world. So actually it limits, the VR environment limits our movement area. So this is a disadvantage. This is a very crucial disadvantage of VR. Thank you.